Okay, we're approaching DEFCON 3, right? So, I don't know. Is DEFCON 1 the most dangerous, or is DEFCON 5 most? I don't know, but we're somewhere in the middle of being super fucking starving. I just finished the last lecture and I felt like I was okay, but now it's 1:30 and I'm like inching closer to disaster. Man, you guys miss so much about like the in-class experience. These lectures tend to be so much fun when you're in class picking on students, and the fact that I just don't have any students to pick on, it kills me. So anyway, uh, standard cost. What we were just doing in the previous lecture was we were saying, hey, listen, there is a difference between the flexible budget and actual results. Okay, there's a variance, and the variance could be the result of the price being more or less than what we anticipated, or it was the case that the efficiency, like the way that we used the input, could have been more or less, like quantity. And so, this next step, this particular lecture, is that we are going to establish what we are going to call a standard cost. And once we establish a standard cost, we can then try to interpret variances in a much more sophisticated way. Um, and so, standard cost, okay? Standard costs can be used in flexible budgeting systems to enable management to better understand the reasons for variances. I think that's what I was just basically saying. Um, I don't even know if I like that previous slide. So I'm going to this, okay? So we're going to set standard costs, okay? And the first item we can talk about is material. And so we can talk about the cost of the material. And again, it could be um, it could be the case that a particular sheet of wood that we use for a table cost X amount, right? But if you think about wood and sheets of wood, there's all sorts of different types of wood. And so, the quality of the wood is going to go into setting a standard cost. And the quantity of wood that we're going to need to purchase for one particular table is going to go into the standard cost. And then there's things associated with labor. There could be motion studies, and motion studies are ways to identify the way that we work. Like, how are we making the table? Are there ways that we can reduce the amount of time associated? If I'm going, 2 blocks down to go pick up wood from our facilities in order to make tables in my workshop, is there any way that I can bring the majority of the wood to the workshop so that I can reduce the amount of time that it takes to get raw material into production? Okay. Interesting stuff. But this really is where rubber hits the road. We are now going to demonstrate or calculate the standard cost for a particular product. Okay. And if we remember back, there are all sorts of things that go into the production of a product, but the main three ones are direct material, direct labor, and overhead. Okay. So we could just talk about material for a second. Whatever it is that we're making, we're saying that we're going to need 2.2 pounds of material. And each pound of material is going to cost $10 per pound. At least we assume. And therefore, the standard cost of material for this particular product is $22. Then we can do the same thing for labor. I anticipate needing 2 hours of direct labor. I'm going to pay my employees $15 per hour. And therefore, for every, I don't know, table that I make or bat, I guess we're making baseball bats in this particular example. For every bat, it's going to cost me about $30 in labor. And then I'm going to have overhead. I'm going to allocate overhead based on direct labor hours. I'm thinking I'm going to have 2 direct labor hours, and the predetermined manufacturing overhead allocation rate for this particular product, $5. And therefore, the total overhead I would allocate to a bat is 62, right? Then, you know, leading into, hold on, leading into my next learning objective, but just kind of a hint. Now I can say, hey, you know what? I can compare the standard cost to the actual cost. And maybe it's the case that my actual cost was $25. And therefore the variance is $3. And now we can say, wow, is this $25 cost the actual cost to make a bat, at least with respect to material? Is it because we were using more than 2.2 pounds per bat of wood? Or is it the case that the price of the wood was more than $10 per pound? Or was it both? Okay. So, in order for us to make those observations, we now have a tool called the standard cost that's going to allow us to then or to further understand what is leading to the differences between what we budgeted and what we're actually incurring.